hours. But staying stopped, that's the hard part. That's because that issue of powerlessness. You know, it's a break in a relationship. If you're addicted to a person, you're going to have to learn to be abstinent from that person. If you're addicted to food, you know, people go, oh, well, what, you're going to not eat? No. You know, I still drink, I just don't drink alcohol. You know? If you're addicted to food, you can eat and you can enjoy a healthy relationship with food, but there may be certain foods, certain associations, certain activities surrounding that relationship that you will have to be abstinent from. You know? Sexual addiction involves various kinds of perhaps activities or relationships. Recovery begins with abstinence. You have to make the break. You have to make the break first, but then you begin to deal with the issue of powerlessness. Then you begin to deal with the issue that, oh, my life has been given over to a power greater than myself, and I need to get out from under that power and under the power of God, who can set me free and allow me to stay free and live in freedom. So let's try to go a little bit deeper. Pete, would you give me just another layer underneath? Let's just go just kind of underneath. And again, this is not a comprehensive set of words. It's just a number of words that I think will hit on some pretty common issues and help us kind of think and help us kind of look. The first one you see on the left there, I think, is defense mechanisms. And there's something I want to say about that. It's probably, you know, I don't think a lot of the work of Sigmund Freud. In fact, I think he was probably a really sick dude. But I'll tell you, he did some great work on defense mechanisms. You know, he did some great work. Defense mechanisms, they're human constructs. They are ways that we try to keep ourselves safe and insulated from the world around us. And let me throw out some other words under that heading, defense mechanisms. Denial, you've probably heard of that one. It's a defense mechanism. Blame, pride, and pride's probably up there twice. Pride is a defense mechanism, and there it is, we gave it its own block in the wall. Pride, it's a defense. You know what they say sometimes in addiction recovery programs? They say, oh, we're egomaniacs with an inferiority complex. You know, the prouder the man, the smaller the boy inside. It's a cover. It's a cover. That's why they use pride, they associate with pride with like a lion. Because a lion just gets all shaggy and roars to scare the opponent. He don't want to fight with anybody. You know, he just wants to give the appearance of. That's what pride does. You just get all puffed up so that you'll back off because you'll think I'm scary. And I'm not really this scary, I'm scared. That's the real story. It's a cover. Anger, and we used another word in the previous session, rage. You know, anger is a perfectly normal emotion. Okay, but what about when it festers? You know, what about when it kind of takes on a life of its own and it begins to control us rather than us controlling it? And then there's this word control. It's a huge word. Control. Sometimes that's what's under there, our drive to control. Sometimes that's driving the dysfunction in our marriages, our relationship with our children, our work situation, because we think somehow if I can control the people and the situation around me, then I'll be okay. But see, I just said that, and can you sense there's something even underneath that then? Want to control, so I can't get along with anybody because I'm always trying to control, because if I get everybody acting just the way I think they should act, then I'll be okay. Something very important underneath. So just get to thinking about what's underneath. These things are interconnected with each other. So defense mechanisms, I mentioned a bunch of them, but I didn't mention intellectualizing, rationalizing, justifying, projection, regression, isolation. There's a bunch of them. We don't have room to fit them all on there. Blame, it's just easier to say it's you. See, then I'm not responsible. I'd rather think of myself as a victim than take responsibility for picking up my life. Let me go to another level. Take me to the third level, where the first word is fear, and it's actually two words, fear and anxiety. Now, we could go all the way to the top level again, and we say, well, that's a feeling. Fear is a feeling. But let me tell you something. Fear is going to show up on more than one level, because there is more than one level of fear. There is. Fear is just a feeling. You can get just a perfectly natural, get scared, maybe for a good reason. You can be scared for a little bit. That's not necessarily a bondage. Or it could be a deeper issue. A deeper issue. Because things have happened in your life that have showed you that you are not safe and that you have every reason to be afraid. And so there's always just this fear kind of percolating down in there. It just kind of spoils everything. Just kind of wears on everything. It's a strong one, and it's going to come up again even deeper still. And I put fear and anxiety because anxiety is a word that describes fear in a little bit more aggressive terms, I think. But again, let me say something about fear and anxiety, because there's another thing about that. Anxiety can even be a physiological thing. That is, some of us have problems with brain chemistry, and that is to say we're just a little out of whack. I heard that as soon as that came out of my mouth. Just a little out of balance. But you know what it does is that when your system is out of balance, your brain is sending the wrong signal to the rest of your body. I went through a period, it lasted for about a year, where I was having panic attacks. And there was no circumstantial or situational reason to have them, but I'm telling you, every once in a while it would come on me, and I thought I was having a heart attack. And if it wasn't my heart, then the sky was falling. Something terrible was going on. And I look around, nothing was up. Wasn't even a particularly stressful day. But you see, my brain was malfunctioning. My brain was saying, emergency, emergency, emergency. And so all my body was ready to deal with the emergency. There wasn't nothing wrong. That's physiological. It's not circumstantial. I don't believe it was spiritual. They have medication that helps with that. Some of us, and what I did is, I had to change some lifestyle things that just kind of helped me crank it back just a bit. I had to crank it back just a bit. But there's great medication, and what it does is it cranks it back just a bit. Now, I'm not talking about sedatives to calm you down. I'm not talking about nerve medication to calm your nerves. No, that's not helpful. It masks the issue. It doesn't solve anything. No, I'm talking about something that restores a little balance to your brain chemistry. Antidepressant medication deals with anxiety. And sometimes there's a lot of success with that. So I just want to acknowledge that issue as we talk here. So fear, anxiety, unworthiness, this is a big thing. This is a big thing, this idea of unworthiness. And here it is, kind of fairly deep. We're going to find it again deeper. It's almost like deep down within every human being there's a suspicion that everybody else is smarter than I am. Smarter, better looking, more competent, more attractive to the rest of the human race, more acceptable in society. It's like we have this suspicion. It's one of the reasons we kind of hide, we cover up. Because if you knew who I really was, you might not let me hang out in this room with you tonight. See, there's this suspicion. It's a very common thing. Sense of unworthiness. We're not the same. We're less than. And guilt and shame. It's perfectly healthy to feel guilty when you're doing something wrong. That's just like an alarm. That's like you go too close to the fire, you go, oh. Guilt can be good. It's just a message. It's going, no, that's bad for you. Yeah. So you repent, you go, okay, you turn from the fire, and the Lord forgives every time. He paid the price, But some of us have some guilt frozen. Some of us, our guilt is like, sometimes we feel guilty for something somebody else does. Doesn't even belong to us, So that's something down there that can be kind of an infection. And shame is terrible. One of the great things about the cross of Jesus Christ, it has dealt with shame for all time. And one of the great things of being a minister of Jesus Christ is I get to keep telling people that shame has been abolished for all time. Because shame is that awful sense that you're just no good. Guilt deals with what you did. Shame reflects on who you are. Shame says, you ain't worthy, you're less than, you're bad. You're bad. There's something bad on you. And Jesus Christ, by the blood that he shed upon the cross, has dealt with that. He's washed it away. And so if it's still in there, he can wash it away. But you got to get it in there. You've got to expose it so that he can deal with it. And he'll deal with it. I guarantee you he'll deal with it. Depression. Again, I want to kind of put a caveat, the same one that when I was talking about anxiety. There's different kinds of depression. There's situational depression. If your wife just left you and you're depressed, that's not an unhealthy response. You're going to be bummed out. When things happen in your life that are grievous, depression is a normal response. You need some friends to help you through. And you need a season of healing. Depression isn't always such a bad thing. Depression, though, also can be physiological. That is, it can be a function of brain chemistry. That you just, because of a certain dysfunction in your brain chemistry, that you seem to lose the ability to take captive every thought. You just can't take captive every thought. Your thoughts are just, they've run away with you and you can't get a hold of them. And there's medication that can be very, very helpful. And all it does, again, is it just restores that certain balance so that you can pick and choose who you let live in your head. But depression can very much be a spiritual condition. I think it's a very common spiritual condition. The devil just loves to heap stuff on you that weighs you down. Shame. It's a weight. Bitterness and resentment. It's a heavy weight. It robs you of life. I believe there's a spirit of depression. It's just in and of itself, it hangs on you and just can weight you down. So there's no joy, there's no vitality. But there it is, we're getting deep, and there's depression down in there very often. You just kind of try to just see how much of this applies to you, and perhaps it'll even remind you of words I'm not even speaking that are kind of in there somewhere. And I have the word pain, and I'm not sure how to describe that, but the fact of the matter is that childhood is very difficult and very painful. And a lot of times we've experienced pain and it's never been healed. It was covered so quickly that it never got healed. And we just grew up around us and it's still there. It's still there. It's natural to cover pain. I remember it just jumped up in my face when my oldest son was really small. I don't know, well, he's maybe 4 or something like that, or 5. And he was running around in the yard and the driveway between these two houses, and somehow he cut his finger really, really bad. I mean, it was bad. And he was like looking, he's like, ah! That's why he's ah! I thought, oh my God, I had to run over there and grab that finger. You know what I do when I cut my finger? The first thing I do, I turn away from it, I go, if I cut it, oh! And then I go, oh, it's pretty bad. It's natural. We can't stare into the face of pain. Bring that back to childhood. What about way worse pain than a cut finger? What about sexual abuse? What about severe physical abuse? You know, one of the worst things, one of the things I hate the most about the devil is that he's such a bully. You know, he don't mind picking on kids. You know, a lot of the problems that we have that we're overcoming this weekend happened when we were very, very, very little. And the devil moved in because he takes advantage of pain. He takes advantage of our need. He takes advantage of our weakness. And he just moves in as a friend, and he takes us captive. So there's pain. I'm telling you, being born is painful. You know? I mean, I know it's painful to have a baby. Now, I had never actually had a baby, but I was present at the birth of the two babies that I do have. One is 29 and one is 17. But I'm telling you, do you ever notice that's painful for the child? It's called a birth trauma, you know? I mean, think about it. The child in the womb, now I wouldn't say it's a perfect environment, but it's pretty darn close. It's probably as close as you get on the earth. The temperature is always just right. You're kind of floating around, so gravity is not an issue. It's comfortable. You don't get hungry because all the nourishment is just being delivered just as you need it. You know, you're in this liquid, so it's a shock absorber for anything that happens. You know. Yeah. It's kind of dark, but not completely. And you're cool. You don't know what's happening next. You don't, you know, you're not looking forward to your birthday. That's why you really don't celebrate your birthday. You know, you celebrate the first year from when you were born. Isn't that true? I just thought of that. You don't really celebrate your birthday. It's because that was a hard day. Because, first of all, you're on your way out of environment. Nope, you don't want to leave. Nobody asked you your opinion, and now you're leaving, and the leaving is difficult. You're just being all scrunched and smushed, and then this environment, this warm water is gone. You know? And then eventually, and it takes hours and hours, you come out into the world and they got these lights on that are ridiculous. So and they used to turn you upside down and hit you on the butt for no reason. And then you get hungry. First time. You're hungry. You're needy. So, you know, if I talk about broken people, people in pain, and you think I'm just talking to a few people, I'm talking to all of you. And everybody else as well. These things hurt. You know? And if we were born into the perfect, nurturing family, the perfect, nurturing, godly family, where there was love spoken, where all the sounds were love, all the touch was love, all the holding was love, and the Spirit of God was ministering peace in that environment, well, then we'd have probably grown up a little healthier than we did. Some of those wounds that were unavailable probably would have healed a lot faster, but we didn't grow up perfect. In fact, we grew up often in dysfunctional families, and our wounds did not heal. And in fact, there were critical foundational needs that never really got met. But I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Let me see, where are we? Okay, so we've kind of covered 3 rows, and I think we're doing good. Let me go to the next one, because see, underneath all this, all these deeper, sometimes emotional issues are some critical things that we have got to be able to identify in ourselves, and that's attitudes and beliefs. I mean, do you know that if you believe you're no good, that's probably how you will behave in the world, and the world around will probably believe you, you know? And your life will not bear much fruit. If you believe that you deserve no good thing, you may miss every good thing that ever comes your way. If you don't believe that you deserve to be loved, you will set yourself up to push away anyone who ever tries to love you. Our true beliefs, and I'm not just talking about beliefs about God, our true beliefs about ourselves and about the world drive these other issues. And we've got to find out what they are. What do you believe? You see, let me go back to that child just for a minute being born into the world. See, a child is basically a question mark. You know, as soon as they're born, there's just a question mark. It's just like, what? They have no idea. They have a consciousness, very undeveloped, yet it's there, and they don't know what's happening. And the biggest question, and it's not formed the way I form it because their intellect isn't really formed yet, you know. But the big question is, what is this? Is it okay? Am I safe? Who am I? And it is incumbent upon the adults around, particularly the parents, to give them the message. Again, not the intellectual message. You know, not, well, we've been waiting for you for many years, and we've painted a special room, a special color. We love you. We will always love you. We will always be there for you. A child doesn't know what all that means. No, but the presence of a calm, consistent, nurturing, nourishing parent. It's more important, the sound of your voice, than the words that you use. Yeah. It's more important that you're just touching in love. Yeah. All the time. Just all the time. Yeah. See, we always gave our kids lots of love and touching, and we knew they'd get too big-headed eventually. But I figured it'd be better to knock them down a peg or two than try to build them up from having a low self-esteem. So we've been telling our kids how great they are. You know, we've been loving them too much, and I don't mind. I'd do the same thing again. And I'm not trying to take them down a peg or two, but the world has done some of that. So our attitudes and beliefs about ourselves, about the world, and about God come from the people around us, okay? And we have gotten some real bad messages. And I don't mean from the preacher with bad theology. And I don't even necessarily mean the world from bad philosophy. I mean the messages from the relationships in our lives. The messages. You see, when a child is born, this little infant child, he cannot, it's perfectly natural to think he's the center of the universe because that's all he knows. And that's important to remember because it's a mistake. They don't know any better. And some of us are still the same way, but it's still a mistake. It's just more dangerous now than it was then. But a child just assumes that they are the center, that's all there is. And you're just part of me, you're an extension of me, and you feed me or you don't feed me. And there's this sense that they're generating everything that happens. And so whenever something bad happens, the child's impression is that they caused it, that they're responsible for it. It's theirs. That's why it's so horrible. When dad leaves home and you're 2, and he never comes back, and you don't even remember him, it did some damage, and that damage may still be there. Because you know what the message is? You ain't even worth staying with. Now that poor man, he was probably leaving your mother, you know, or following some addiction or who knows what. But it wasn't all about you. You were collateral damage, man. You were a casualty of that thing, you know. But in the child's perception, it was all about that. He left me. And even if you don't remember him leaving, it's in there. And so who are you going to trust now? Or what about when it's mom? Oh my God, some of you I know for a fact had your mothers left. Sometimes because mom was mentally ill and she kept going to the hospital. Or she was an alcoholic and she was in and out of jail or wherever. This inconsistency just does so much damage, you know. But the child thinks it's all about them. And we grow up and we know better, but we haven't necessarily let that knowing better get down into the heart's wound over that. So who are you going to trust? You know, if your mother left. You know, how are you going to feel good about yourself? Your mother wouldn't even stay with you. So we know it had nothing to do with you. She was sick. We can even have compassion. She was sick, bless her heart. She did the best she could. She didn't have the skill. She didn't have the health. She was in bondage. But that child's perception, if that's part of what holds us bound, we have to find it. And the adult needs to minister the Lord to that child. Okay, I'm going to take a few more minutes. I'm going to cover just a little more ground, and then I'm going to stop, at least until the next session. Let me stay on attitudes and beliefs a little bit. Let me just throw out a few more just to kind of make sure we're all thinking about the same thing. These are some of the attitudes and beliefs that we may have that contribute to us being in bondage. I'm not okay. I'm not adequate. I can't reveal my true self. I am less than. I'll never succeed. I'm doomed. I'm no good. God has condemned me. God is frightening. I'm not safe. I'm stupid. I'll never be hurt again. I must be in control. I cannot be forgiven. I must ensure my own safety. Men can't be trusted. Women can't be trusted. God is inconsistent and hard to please. I could go on and on and on. I'm just trying to say enough to get you thinking so that you can find whatever the Lord wants you to find within you. I'm going to go to the next level, but I'm only going to stay there for a couple minutes because I think I've covered some of what I would want to cover. This next level, we're getting way down to the bottom. We're about getting to the bottom line here, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. And I would call these foundational events or circumstances. Foundational. And that is that, back to this child, if this child has severe damage as it is growing developmentally, then that damage has a profound effect on the functioning of the adult later on. And so we talk about abuse, and I've said a few things. There is a message. Do you know that when you receive abuse, that is physical, emotional, or sexual as a child, do you know that that abuser or those abusers might be the strongest teacher that you ever had? And they may have taught you you're no good. They may have taught you you'll never amount to nothing. They may have taught you in the most profound way possible that you're not safe. Because even the one that was supposed to take care of you hurt you. And how can you ever really feel safe? Well, thank God for God, because He's the only one that can get there. He's the only one that can get there. And so I'm challenging you, because we have built these strongholds with the influence of the devil. We've bought into the lies. I'm not worth loving. And yet God loves me so much, He died for me and He lives for me. You see, there's a contradiction in me. if I think I'm no good, and God thinks I'm good enough to die for. And these are the things that we need to challenge, even as these next 2 or 3 sessions go forward. So abuse, neglect, the same issue, woundedness, unmet needs. I won't spend a lot of time there. I may touch on it again in the morning. But these are these foundational things. You know, listen, let's go back to this child, this 2-week-old child, this 2-month, 2-year-old child. You know, they need what they need. They need warmth and consistency and food and tending. They need it. Not just like I need to get a pizza later, no. They need it. It's a life and death issue. They need it. If you do not hold your child, if you leave them alone and feed them from some kind of machine and never touch them, they will die. They must be loved. It's a requirement. If you didn't get it, but somehow you survived anyway, I'll tell you, nobody's going to please you. Nobody's going to love you enough. No wonder we have so many dysfunctional relationships, because sometimes what's driving us is an old unmet need that mom can't meet. Now she's gone. And